The bomber is dying. Metal screams. Wind shrieks through torn aluminum. Blood freezes on the cockpit floor. 21-year-old Charlie Brown grips the controls with hands that won't stop shaking. This is his first mission. 4 days before Christmas, 1943. He's flying a corpse through the sky. The B-17 they call Ye Old Pub shouldn't be airborne. Half the rudder is gone, the nose cone shattered. 3 of 4 engines barely turn. Through holes big enough to climb through, the December cold pours in at 60 below zero. In the back, his tail gunner is dead, decapitated by a cannon shell. The others are wounded, bleeding, frozen. One man's feet have turned black from frostbite. Another took shrapnel to the eye. The morphine they carried, frozen solid, useless. They discussed bailing out, jumping, taking their chances as prisoners of war. But one of them can't jump. His leg is too badly wounded. And these boys, farm kids and factory workers who've known each other for months, they won't leave him behind. So they fly. 250 miles of open water between them and England. Between them and survival. But first, they have to cross the German coastline, the Atlantic Wall. Every gun in the Reich pointed at the sky. Then, through the shattered plexiglass, Brown sees it, a shape, dark and fast, closing from behind. A Messerschmitt Bf-109. And this is where the story truly begins. Rewind 12 hours. The briefing room at RAF Kimbolton is thick with cigarette smoke and nerves. Officers point to maps. Bremen, they say. A factory churning out Focke-Wulf fighters for the Luftwaffe. Expect resistance. Hundreds of fighters. Over 250 flak guns. Brown's crew draws the worst position in the formation. Purple Heart Corner, the edge of the bomber stream, where German fighters love to strike. Exposed, vulnerable. But 3 planes abort with mechanical problems. Brown gets moved up, front of the formation. For a moment, it feels like luck. It isn't. They take off before dawn. 10 young men crammed into a flying aluminum tube, loaded with 12 500-pound bombs. Brown in the pilot's seat. His co-pilot, Spencer Pinky Luke, beside him. Behind them, a navigator, a bombardier, 5 gunners. Kids, really. The oldest is 24. At 27,300 feet, the temperature drops to negative 60 degrees Fahrenheit. They're so high they need oxygen masks just to stay conscious. Then they cross into German airspace, and hell opens up. Flak first. Black clouds of shrapnel exploding at their exact altitude. The Germans have calculated their height, their speed, their trajectory. A shell detonates directly in front of them. The nose cone shatters. Plexiglass shards spray the cockpit. Engine number 2 dies instantly. Engine number 4, already questionable, begins to overspeed, threatening to tear itself apart. Brown throttles it back. The bomber slows, falls behind. The formation flies on without them. Now they're alone, a straggler, and the German fighters have noticed. More than a dozen Messerschmitts and Focke-Wulfs converge on Ye Old Pub like wolves on wounded prey. For 10 minutes, an eternity in combat, they attack in waves. Cannon shells punch through aluminum. Machine gun bullets stitch lines across the fuselage. Engine number 3 takes a hit. Reduced to half power. The hydraulics fail. The electrical system shorts out. The oxygen system ruptures. The guns start jamming. Frozen firing mechanisms. Of 11 guns that should be defending them, only 3 still work. In the tail, Sergeant Hugh Eckenrode is firing when a cannon shell finds him. Instant. Total. His body slumps in the turret.
Sergeant Alex Yelisenko takes shrapnel to the leg. Critical. Bleeding. Sergeant Richard Petchout catches a shell fragment to the eye. Sergeant Blackford's heating wires short out. His feet begin to freeze solid in his boots. Brown himself takes a hit to the right shoulder. The radio is destroyed. They can't call for help. Can't tell anyone they're still alive. Somehow, impossibly, the bomber stays airborne. Limping, bleeding, dying, but still flying. And then, finally, the German fighters break off the attack. Maybe they're out of ammunition. Maybe they assume the B-17 is finished. Either way, they leave. Brown points the nose northwest, toward England, toward home. It's 135 miles per hour. That's all they've got, on maybe 40% power. The North Sea stretches ahead like an impossible distance. But the German coastline stands between them and the water. The Atlantic Wall. The killing ground. Every anti-aircraft gun in northwestern Germany is waiting. Brown knows what he's asking his crew. He tells them they can bail out, parachute, become prisoners. It's better than dying. Every man refuses. They're getting home. Together. Or not at all. On the ground below, at a German airfield near Jever, another pilot watches the crippled bomber pass overhead. His name is Franz Stigler. He's 28 years old. 7 years older than Brown. A lifetime in war. He's a veteran. An ace. 27 confirmed kills. One more bomber and he earns the Knight's Cross, the highest honor a fighter pilot can receive. Yesterday, he shot down 2 B-17s. Today could be his day. He's been on the ground, repairing his own plane. A .50 caliber bullet is lodged in his radiator. One wrong move and the engine overheats. But it's flyable. When he sees the straggling bomber, instinct takes over. Target. He runs to his Messerschmitt, starts the engine, takes off in seconds. The chase is brief. The B-17 is slow. Damaged. Easy prey. Stigler pulls up behind it. His finger rests on the trigger. Victory is a squeeze away. Then he flies closer. Close enough to see. Through the torn open fuselage, through holes ripped by flak and cannon fire, he sees inside. He sees men, wounded, huddled, trying to save each other. He sees blood on the walls. He sees a gunner slumped in his turret. Not moving. Not shooting. Dead. He sees a pilot, a kid, fighting to keep his plane in the air. And something shifts in Franz Stigler's chest. 6 years earlier, in North Africa, Stigler served under a commander named Gustav Rodel, a man who believed in something beyond killing. Rodel told his pilots, "If I ever see or hear of you shooting a man in a parachute, I will shoot you myself." It was about honor, about the line between warrior and murderer. Stigler never forgot those words. Now, looking at the crippled bomber, at the wounded crew, he thinks, they're in a parachute. They're helpless. His hand moves away from the trigger. This will not be his victory. I will not have this on my conscience for the rest of my life, he whispers. He reaches into his jacket, feels his rosary beads, and makes a choice that could get him executed. Instead of shooting, Stigler pulls alongside the B-17. He flies close, so close Brown can see his face. Stigler gestures, points, tries to communicate. Land, surrender. You'll get medical treatment. You'll survive. Or fly to Sweden, neutral territory. They'll intern you, but you'll live. Brown doesn't understand. Can't read the gestures. Doesn't trust this. Why is a German fighter pilot helping them? But Stigler doesn't leave. He stays in formation, on the bomber's left wing. Why? Because the Atlantic Wall is ahead, and if German anti-aircraft gunners see a lone damaged B-17, they'll open fire. But if they see a Bf-109 escorting it, flying in tight formation, they'll think it's a captured plane being brought in. They'll hold their fire. Stigler is shielding them, with his presence, his plane, his body. Brown finally understands. Orders his gunner to aim at the German, but not to fire. A warning. We see you. We're armed. Stigler gets the message. He stays anyway. Mile after mile, across occupied territory, past gun emplacements, past checkpoints where a single radio call could end him. Stigler flies beside the bomber until they reach open water. The North Sea. Safety. Then, and only then, Stigler pulls ahead. Looks over at Brown, locks eyes, and salutes. A gesture across the void, across the war, across everything that's supposed to separate them. Brown, exhausted, bewildered, bleeding, watches the Messerschmitt peel away. The German pilot turns back toward Germany, toward certain death if anyone finds out what he's done. Stigler lands, says nothing, writes nothing in his logbook. The encounter becomes a secret he'll carry for 45 years. Brown makes it across the North Sea, all 250 miles, on fumes and will. He lands at RAF, seething, not even his own base. The landing gear barely holds. When the crew climbs out, ground personnel stare in disbelief. They've never seen a plane this damaged make it home. Brown reports what happened. A German pilot, an escort, a salute. The officers listen, file it away. Mark it top secret. No one talks about it again. Ye old pub never flies another mission, too damaged. It's shipped back to the United States, scrapped in 1945. Brown finishes his combat tour, survives the war, comes home to West Virginia, goes to college, rejoins the newly formed U.S. Air Force in 1949. He serves until 1965, then works for the State Department, travels to Laos, to Vietnam. In 1972, he retires, moves to Miami, becomes an inventor. But he never forgets the salute, the face in the cockpit, the man who let him live. Stigler, meanwhile, flies until the war ends, transitions to the Messerschmitt Me-262, the world's first operational jet fighter. Serves in an elite unit formed to challenge the Allies' air superiority. When Germany surrenders, he's lost everything. His country, his brother, killed in a training accident, his way of life.
In 1953, he emigrates to Canada, starts over, builds a business, becomes successful, buries the war, never speaks of the encounter, because in post-war Germany what he did, sparing an enemy, could still be seen as treason. He could still receive death threats, condemnation, so he stays silent. For decades, two men on opposite sides of the world carry the same memory. A moment above the North Sea, a choice, a salute, and neither knows the other's name. 1986, Maxwell Air Force Base, Alabama. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Charlie Brown is invited to speak at a reunion. Gathering of the Eagles, a meeting of combat pilots. Someone asks, "Any memorable missions?" Brown pauses, thinks, then tells the story. The German fighter, the escort, the salute. Afterward, he decides, "I have to find him." He begins searching, U.S. records, German records, West German Air Force archives. Nothing. 4 years of dead ends. Then he writes a letter to a Combat Pilot Association newsletter. A long shot. He describes the encounter, the date, the location, the salute. "If anyone knows who this pilot was," he writes, "please contact me." Months pass. Then, one day, a letter arrives from Canada. 4 words. "I was the one." It's signed, Franz Stigler.
Brown calls him, immediately. "Tell me about your plane," Brown says, testing him. Stigler describes the BF-109, the escort, the salute. Every detail matches. For the first time in 47 years, the two men speak. And something remarkable happens. They become friends. Not just acquaintances, friends, brothers. Between 1990 and 2008, they're inseparable. They visit each other, attend reunions together. In 1993, at a reunion of the 379th Bomb Group, the American veterans welcome Stigler as an honorary member. 25 people owe their lives to him. The crew members who survived, their children, their grandchildren. They surround him, hug him, thank him. Stigler says he was the one who received a gift. That Christmas, 1943, when he chose mercy over medals, when he chose humanity over hate. March 22, 2008, Franz Stigler dies. He's 92 years old. November 24, 2008, Charlie Brown dies. 8 months later, age 86. Even in death, they couldn't be apart for long. Before he died, Brown made a final request. He wanted his crew recognized, honored. In 2008, each surviving member of the Ye Olde Pub crew received the Silver Star. Brown himself was awarded the Air Force Cross. But the real medal, the one that mattered, was something neither man ever received from their governments. It was the friendship they built, the forgiveness they granted, the humanity they proved possible. Today, a restored B-17 flies at air shows across America, painted in the colors of Ye Olde Pub. It's not the original plane. That one was scrapped decades ago. But it carries the name, the story, the memory. When it flies, people look up. They see a piece of history. But more than that, they see proof that even in war, especially in war, we have choices. That courage isn't just fighting. Sometimes, courage is refusing to fight. That enemies aren't born, they're made. By nations, by ideologies, by fear. But so is brotherhood. And on December 20th, 1943, 27,000 feet above Germany, two men chose to see each other not as enemies, but as human beings. One flew a dying bomber home to his family.
The other risked everything to let him go. And 50 years later, when they finally met, they discovered what soldiers have always known, but nations struggle to accept. The man trying to kill you today could have been your best friend tomorrow. If only you'd met under different circumstances. If only the world had been different. But Charlie Brown and Franz Stigler didn't wait for the world to change. They changed themselves. And in doing so, they proved something extraordinary. That even at 27,000 feet, in the frozen hell of war, there exists a higher call. One that transcends nations, transcends uniforms, transcends the machinery of hate. The call to be more than what war demands. To be, simply, human. That's what happened on December 20th, 1943. That's why two old men searched the world for each other. That's why their story matters. Because in the end, we all face the same choice Franz Stigler faced that day. To pull the trigger, or to salute, to destroy, or to protect. To be the enemy we're told to be, or to be the friend we could have been all along. Two men, two planes, one moment, and a choice that echoed across 50 years. That's the story of Charlie Brown and Franz Stigler. The enemy who saved his life, then vanished for 5 decades, until, at last, they found each other again, and discovered that mercy, true mercy, never dies. It just waits, for as long as it takes, to come home.